What's going on? Welcome to the debate room. It's May 19th. We have a very cool guest today. And Dustin, what's going on?
I'm excited. So I love that we're doing this, like branching. I've got the political bug a little bit, and we picked a great day for this particular topic. So today, huge win, bad loss for the uniparty establishment. President Trump has endorsed my friend, Attorney General Ken Paxton, for the Senate seat in Texas in a very contentious runoff there. It's going to be a huge deal. So literally going to be legendary. We have the Thomas Massie race in Kentucky, District 4. The polls are just about to close there. That's a congressional primary that's seen $35 million in spending, which is insanity for a primary. So will be very interesting for sure to see how that shakes out. And we don't have basically, and Hunter Biden has returned to X, or has come to X, which is also, I think, going to be crazy. So it's going to be a very interesting time and shakeup in politics, and desperately needed. So let's get into it.
Dustin, when are you not in the mood for a political debate?
Most of I've been pretty black-pilled on politics, but I think there's a correlation. Like, the longer that crypto remains in just the boring chop, the more I'm like, the politics look pretty sexy over there.
Well, Joshua, no time than now to have you. You have a very cool book that just came out. You're a ghostwriter. You're known as the best ghostwriter in the world. That's right. That's what I'm going to title you as. You are Trump's favorite writer. That's not my words. That's Current Affairs words. And Trump and Vance have both endorsed your books as New York Times bestsellers. So tell us about you and more about this new book that you have out now.
Thank you, Dana. Dustin, it's good to finally meet you here virtually in person. Yes, so I'm Joshua Lysak. I've been a ghostwriter for 15 years. And when I saw AI coming along, GPT-2 in 2018, I saw a sample of it. I thought, I don't think it's going to pay to be an anonymous freelance writer anymore. I need to take the ghost out of the writer and just simply be a writer. So around that time, I began writing and creating my own courses on writing, began writing books again, and co-authoring books with various troublemakers to sort of allow my own message and voice and experience to appear rather than simply remain in the shadows. And I have 5 books coming out this year under the Joshua Lysak name, some solo, some with co-authors. And the first of the year has just come out, and it's called Run Right, my co-author is Cliff Maloney of Citizens Alliance. He's in a lot of campaigns and organizing almost more than 500 victories confirmed in local, state, and federal elections. I wanted to write this book since 2020 when I realized that there is no right-wing organizing handbook. There's no book or resource or tome or manual that any type of America First or Make America Great Again aligned candidate or candidate to be can simply pick up the manual, do what it says, know exactly what you're doing in the correct order, step by step with no step skipped, and actually win. And of course, Tyler Bowyer from Turning Point, he gave us the forward to this because such a book like this, I would say Turning Point is a good case study on how to run right. Of course, it has a dual meaning. We talk in the book about the sort of candidates the right must source in the post-Trump era. There's a whole chapter dedicated to what happens next following the 2028 presidential election and going forwards into there. Economic populism and I will call it localist nationalism are not going anywhere. I think that is the future of a successful Republican Party that appeals to the common person rather than, oh, it's going to be conservative or libertarian. No, it's going to be nationalist, populist, or there's not going to be one. From my perspective. And that's the case that Cliff and I make in chapter 23 of Run Right.
Well, so I'll say Cliff is a legend. Maloney's been around forever. It's done incredible work. So, like, congrats on that. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Like, having done elections for as long as I have and having watched, like, kind of the party. I think something else that happened in the news in the last 24 hours also plays a big part in this. Arctic frost and what happened to the MAGA coalition after we beat Hillary Clinton in 2016. There was an attack on all populist MAGA organizers and organizations with lawfare, censorship, debanking. And so it's more important than ever that we kind of structure and organize people. So I'm really excited to read the book. For one, I've learned a lot from Cliff Maloney and watching his races over the years. I mean, he's one of these guys who I've seen in probably 10 different states, like very actively winning elections. That's just where we cross paths. I mean, he's always behind the right kind of candidates. But Ken Paxton, John Cornyn is a perfect example. We saw Bill Cassidy lose his Senate primary. He didn't even make the runoff in Louisiana after backing a bunch of COVID policies. John Cornyn is the whip. I think he's number 3 in Senate leadership. The Trump endorsement today almost certainly means Ken Paxton will emerge as the Republican candidate for Senate in Texas. And Trump's influence on allowing and building, I think you said it right, the populist wing of the party is not going away. People are fed up with the establishment. I'll add one more case, like race that I'm really watching closely. Spencer Pratt in Los Angeles, what he's doing to connect as genuine as authentic using short clip videos. The whole model has changed. And the last thing I'll say about this that I see is like a big change that's coming. I'd love your opinion on, John. The old ways of spending money on campaigns is not going to be, you are not going to be able to ad buy on network and cable television and direct mail and robocall your way to victories anymore. Like the voter, the new wave of voters that are coming in demand a more personalized experience with their candidates that's really going to be emphasized in short form video, in my opinion. I'd love to get your take.
I think that is a fantastic way to think about what your message is going to be, your audio visual message as a candidate. What we talk about in Run Right is we lay out sort of the 18 steps to win. Step 1 is actually deciding, I'm going to do this. I'm going to run step 1. And which office are you going to run for? And then from there forwards, you treat your candidacy like a marketing campaign. And what you have is a funnel and those who are familiar with marketing will understand that there's the top of the funnel and there's the bottom of the funnel. The top of the funnel are basically all of the prospects and leads, potential clients, customers, whatever you want to call them. And then the bottom of the funnel, that's who actually becomes your buyers, so to speak. So you treat your zip code like that, or what your district is. Within that population, who's actually going to be voting for you? So we teach how to do your research and looking up this data and which tools to use to figure out who is the likeliest to vote for you based on demographics, based on psychographics like behavior, party affiliation, ideology, all manner of things. And then you simply decide what is your stool, so to speak, your three-legged stool that your campaign sits upon. So what are the top 3 issues that matter to everyone in your zip code, to your district, to your county, to your city, township, state, school district? Okay, whichever office you're running for. What are the top 3 problems that they're annoyed with, frustrated with, terrified of? And or what are the remaining things that they want to accomplish? What do they want to see get done that would be a value add? So what you're doing is you're creating like a businessman's or woman's message. Here's what you want. I will give it to you. Call to action. Vote for me on this date at this time. And then you engage in, ballot chasing initiatives. That does involve door knocking from the candidate. There's compelling data that the more potential voters see of the person, of the candidate, not their minions, representatives, or endorsers, the more they like the candidate personally, the more they see them personally. And that can be through video, that can ideally be in person and doing like actual events and making it fun and going door to door and wearing all of the paraphernalia that's associated with the message that you are putting out there. And the thing is, this stuff works. I would say the majority of the elections that Cliff has worked on have been highly competitive primary campaigns, where the job has been, how do you persuade those ideologically aligned voters who might otherwise be undecided, that they might otherwise vote for the other person? It's a more difficult. It's like the real election, so to speak. But the same rule of the 3 still applies.
It's a great point on the primaries, where your options to change things really take it, because the general election, the argument of like, listen, there's Republicans who are never going to vote for Democrats. There's Democrats who are never going. People have kind of chosen their team for the general election in large part. So if you want to affect real change from a policy standpoint, you want to get some of those things that Josh is talking about, like your time to get it done is in the primary elections. I'm curious. So one of my favorite political campaign strategy books, Rick Perry and his Eggheads. So Rick Perry, when he was running for the 3rd time as governor of Texas, was such a shoo-in that he allowed a team from Yale to randomize his campaign buys in order to judge effectiveness. So, for example, he allowed them to choose which districts he would do radio ad buys, which districts he would do network television, what districts he would do cable television, what districts he would do robocalls, and what districts they would focus on door knocking in person. And then in order to be able to gauge and measure effectiveness of campaign money spent. And the results were fascinating. Essentially, the only thing that had positive ROI as far as being able to turn out votes was in-person door knocking. I think the others were within the margin of error as far as being like having an impact on how many people turned out and who voted for who and what the end results were. Only a focus on door knocking and person-to-person politics had an impact. I've always found that just to be one of the most interesting case studies in all of this.
I want to just say one thing about that. I liked Joshua's comment about making it more, it's kind of like marketing. And the fact, Dustin, that you're saying that door knocking had such a high result, that's the same exact thing like when people say, cold calling is going out of style. It's just simply not. That's absolutely been proven that it's not going anywhere.
I think it's even more than that, Dana, which is I actually think that the longing that people like the fact that so much of our lives is through screens and digital now, the longing for human to human interaction and the value of it when it actually happens is only going like that's a chart that goes only up and to the right from here on out, in my opinion. And it also separates the people who are serious from the wannabes. The wannabes, the people who run because they want attention and they want the gravitas. Those are not the dudes who are knocking on 25,000 doors to be able to win their mayor's race or their lower election race. And it shouldn't be understated as well. Politics is interesting because a lot of people like to start at the top and run for a big office, but the real forces start local. They build a solid donor and volunteer base in an election where maybe they need 5,000 votes to win or 500 votes to win. And then that base is what compels them to win larger offices all the way up to like big statewide elections. So like people often think that they can
Yes, and another way to think about this is what your budget is that you can realistically fundraise. And as let's say crass as this may seem, your budget via fundraising, donors and whatnot, will determine whether or not you can effectively buy the office. I'm not being literal, of course, but I'm being directionally accurate. Okay, if you want to be a U.S. senator, this is how you need to buy that office. Again, directionally accurate, truthful hyperbole, not literally, but you all know what I mean. Okay, we do know that there is a correlation between funds and whether or not you runs and win all the way. Okay, and then given what your connections are, your personal network, your own abilities and capacity, maybe you ought to start with something like city commissioner, if you have a small enough city and that would work. Or perhaps there's county treasurer, for example. These sorts of roles where, like you were saying, you can put together, let's say, this sort of coalition of supporters, volunteers, donors, etc., that you can ride to the next office, to the next office, or to the next office on up from there. And if you go and look at any, let's say, nationally successful politician in America today, by and large, if you go and look at their Grokpedia or Wikipedia page, you will see something like U.S. representative, and then before that will be state senator, before that state legislator, before that school board for this many years, before that it was like city council. There is years and years and years of this for the vast majority, not all, but for most, this is simply not their first rodeo, and the movement for that person in their area just got bigger and bigger and bigger, frankly. And there's a lot of sensitivity around subjects related to campaigning, organizing, leadership, like concerns around blackmail. We like to joke in the book, we call it black pill mail. Of course, referring to black pill versus red pill and blue pill and whatnot, the kind of that internet meme, and whether or not you ought to be totally afraid of maybe, quote unquote, your past, because literally anything that you have ever done in public can and will be used against you to the absolute max, even by people who are especially by people who are of your same party in your same city. Even in a local county election, your name and your reputation will be absolutely shot by the end of your very first election. There will be roughly half the city who basically red letters you, they will scarlet letter you, let's say, for the rest of your life in that area. And then they say, well, this is why decent people don't run for office. Yeah, but you hate the player, but you still got to play the game if you want to play the game. Every traffic ticket, there's going to be a meme made of it. You're talking about direct mail. So one of the most effective by ROI, basically return on investment in direct mail for votes, is negative direct mail absolutely smearing the character of your opponent. Usually put out by a political action committee, let's say, that is supporting your candidacy, but not officially organizationally joined up to yours. One of the most effective pieces of mail is a way to demoralize the opponent, get them off topic in the waning and running days. I have seen 10+% likely candidates get creamed because someone ran a negative direct mail within the last 2 weeks and just spent tens of thousands of dollars on that. And what was going to be an easy win became an unbelievable upset for that. So the fact of the matter is, this stuff really works. I think, well, people say, well, look at Donald Trump. The good example of Donald Trump and his kind of public character is, let's say, his relationships with women, his antics as a reality TV star, a larger than life New York City billionaire celebrity developer. Okay. All of the character flaws, so to speak, you was sort of already known about that person. So you kind of have two options here. You must vault away anything that could be that can be construed as a misconstruing of you, bury it away so it's impossible to reach, or get so far out in front of it, the public is, oh yeah, that's old news. We already know that. That's fine. And like if it's a criminal record, or it's a disastrous slaughterfest of a divorce, or if it's a business that went up in flames and whatnot, get so far out ahead of that story and you integrate it into who you are, so it's a non-issue that is neutral or even positive. So for those people who are thinking about wanting to be active in some way, now is the time where you do those things. Otherwise, very bad things will happen to you when you can least afford for them to happen to you.
I love that advice. I mean, and this gets to something else that's changing rapidly in politics. I try to imagine what my life would have been like had I had Instagram and Facebook and social media posting all of the ridiculously absurd things I did while I was young. Like if there was video evidence of that, like in perpetuity, I don't even know. We're coming to an age though, where everybody is going to have some level of that. And I think we're going to see, I think we're already seeing it. We don't believe people who are too clean. And so your hope of being like, I am perfect in every way, like I have never made a mistake, like you better lean into like what's in your past, because the opposition research that is done for any kind of serious race is beyond, I think, most. Like when I get an oppositional research folder on somebody, I have college transcripts, I have who they've dated in the past, I've had like which websites people would be astonished by how much information can be dug up on them and how it can be weaponized. Like even things that you don't even think about can be weaponized on a flyer that gets sent to all of your neighbors talking about what a terrible person you are. It's really well said. And it as far as the money thing goes, in federal elections, 90, I think it's 90, the last number I saw was right around 92%. Whoever has the most money wins, which is right. The raw, brutal fact of it is, like, if you're trying to run for an office where people are spending millions of dollars in ad buys, and you're hoping to run on a $100,000 budget and not fundraise, it's not going to be realistic. Like, I've seen candidates overcome 5-1, 7-1, and in the most extreme cases, like 9 or 10-1. If you get outspent more than that, you can't be competitive. So you got to raise the money. Just have to, Dana.
So, Joshua's also done a lot of, I know you've done a lot of research and you've written a lot and you've studied persuasion naturally. So what's the biggest psychological reason do you think people become emotionally attached to Trump?
I will explain it through the lens of real people, which would be my parents, specifically my dad. So I grew up in a evangelical, homeschool, conservative Christian kind of an environment that was thoroughly invested in what happened on the TV at 6 o'clock, 6:30 every afternoon. Kind of one of those families that like, what's on the local news? What's on the national news? Religiously 5 days a week. Because that's what the baby boomers did growing up when they were the first generation to grow up on television. That's just simply what you did every night at 6 o'clock. You watched the local news, and then you watched Tom Brokaw or Peter Jennings or what have you. Okay. And so during the formative years of my life, of course, that's going to be the drama of the Clinton presidency with Monica Lewinsky. That's going to be George Bush. That's obviously going to be 9/11. Of course, the Gore versus Bush election antics. Then you have the disastrous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the global war on terror fiasco, trillions. It's all, speaking of just black pill, it's just black pill there. And then, of course, you have the Obama administration and the rise of the Tea Party. And the formative years of my life were a front row seat to that experience. And I went with my mom to local Tea Party events where there'd be like guest speakers and politicians and whatnot who would come and speak at these taxed enough already type of events. And that was my a sort of experience. And I remember so thoroughly the dissatisfaction of my parents with President Bush, with other various congressional Republicans on how it was obvious what needed to be done, but they would always back away because of principled constitutional conservatism, our values. And particularly my dad would kind of rant at the television, saying what needed to be said, often with a significant density of profanity at such and such Democratic character, whether it was, Senator Hillary Clinton at that time, during that period, or would be President Barack Obama, or whomever it would be, Dick Cheney, let's say, and feeling like the Democratic Party optimizes for power at every turn. How do we get the edge, the advantage? It doesn't matter what they have to say, whether it's a lie, it's true, it doesn't matter. It's, will this get us more power? We do it. And my father particularly being so frustrated that it seems like at any point the Republicans could sacrifice power to the uniparty, let's say, they would do so, even if, of course, it was not in the best interest of the voters whatsoever. Then along comes Donald Trump. And I remember seeing a couple of his early videos from 2015, right? Like early campaign stops. And I'm thinking, he sounds just like my father yelling at President Bush at 6:30 a.m. in 2007. Maybe it was May 19th, exactly 19 years ago. That's exactly the sort of thing that my dad was saying, yelling at the TV. Oh, there it is. That's his edge. He's simply saying the things that Republican voters have been saying at their TVs and they're home for a decade, and they realize, I'm not alone. Finally, someone who gets it. That's the appeal of Donald Trump. That's the appeal of populism. That's the appeal of Spencer Pratt. So remember I talked about, you just say the things that people want. What do they not want? And then what do they want? You just say those things. That's Donald Trump. That's Spencer Pratt. Now he's using the language of liberals. They like to talk about touchy-feelies and fear, which are like kind of hypotheticals and are not real. Liberals tend to attach themselves to the ethereal. They talk about how much they value empathy, which usually in practice is a disaster. But if that's just who they are, you got to work with what you got to work with. So Spencer Pratt uses the language of, you don't want to feel afraid. So the feel afraid, I feel afraid, I don't want to feel afraid. Those are ethereal, non-reality based descriptions of one's emotional state. Now, maybe Trump over there is talking about the corrupt this, the Republicans this, and the old guard this, but I'm this, and Obama was this, and yes, wow, that's amazing. Finally, somebody. It's the same idea. You just simply say what voters have been saying. It's a demonstration of market research 101. What is your customer verbatim? Simply use that in your copywriting. I don't know what else to tell you here.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Go ahead, Dana.
Well, I was just going to say, I find Joshua so interesting because you kind of merge, the math of politics plus the marketing plus the persuasion element. And in the future of AI, conversation and speech is even more important. And this person just said here, attraction to Trump, he calls cuts and speaks when it's difficult. It changes everyone's strategy. And now influencers call him low IQ while calling out his genius. What are linguistics thinking? And it made me think of this video that you did, Joshua, where you were talking about how Trump speaks And instead of doing the ums and likes that I do, he just kind of repeats. So he'll say things that are in more detail, right? He'll talk about the guy's jacket while he's like gathering his thoughts. He'll describe the color, and he'll just kind of, what would you say, prioritize like being maybe compelling or persuasive over like IQ? Or how is he kind of like, I guess, what would you say is important in the future of speech for these politicians?
Yes, I think that is a fascinating example because unless you've actually attended a Trump rally or watched a full stream speech without any edits or rather any cuts, you might not notice this. But I picked this out of the first rally of Trump's that I attended when he was a candidate, when he was telling a story about something occurring, and when he would pause between sentences and descriptions about what happened and kind of telling the story and let the plot unfold, where a normal person might, as you say, pause to sort of think about what they're going to say next as they're waxing eloquently and riffing, let's say, or perhaps not so eloquently as they say, it's like, they would do that. But Trump would simply, and he still does to this day, just instead of the uhs and the ums, he adds additional details. Whereas a non persuasion professional might simply say something like, so I walked into the room and they might say that. Trump might say instead, I walked in the room, big, beautiful room, golden chandelier. You ever seen a golden chandelier like on the old? And he just like tells you all the details of it. And now you have a very different experience in the same amount of time. Some idiot's going, so I went into the room and, wow, that's really compelling there, John. Versus just simply rat-a-tat-tat giving you these details about the multisensory dimensions. Funny enough, I didn't realize that, but that is not unique to Mr. Trump. I had a couple of years ago, my first two clients from New York City. Interestingly enough, both of them were Jewish entrepreneurs. So Trump is spiritually Jewish in the following way as a New Yorker. And it was like I was working directly with Donald Trump. All of the let's say, colloquialisms and the character expressions and the nonverbal behaviors and the negotiation strategy of Donald Trump within our popular culture. These two Jewish entrepreneurs, to the T, were exactly like, and they even had the same accent. And it was, of course, ironically, both of them were wildly liberal and explicitly hated Donald Trump and would regularly rant about him in our conversations. Like, we're writing a book about, Greek philosophy here, and you can't stop talking about Trump. What is with this? But it was like dealing with the Trumpian personality. And I sort of thought, okay, so this is just sort of the, let's say, a high verbal IQ, effective entrepreneurial New York baby boomer, if that makes any sense. So he's kind of from this same mold, so to speak.
Well, I think back to, so I worked on a bunch of presidential campaigns basically my whole adult life. Donald Trump, the perfect example was Donald Trump on the debate stages in 2016. Like, before Donald Trump, we coached the candidates to have basically the same stock short answers that were non-controversial to every question. And so in that first debate where you had 16 Republican candidates, right, with Rand Paul and Bobby Jindal on one side of the debate and Trump in the middle, I'll never forget, because they went to Rand Paul, somebody I've known for a long time. I admire the Pauls immensely. And Rand gave like a stock answer on foreign policy from kind of the libertarian view, I think. Then they came to Trump. Trump was like, I don't know why we have the little short guy at the end here. I'm pretty sure he didn't even qualify. Like, I'm not even going to address him. He's not at this level, and get him off my stage. And it was Trump from issue to issue to issue completely rewrote what was allowed, like what candidates thought was allowed to be said. That there was a huge and booming industry for guys like Josh to go around and be like, if you want to answer a question on gay marriage and you're running in a very evangelical district, this is how you message it. you're going to talk about abortion. This is how you message it.
Yeah.
And like it was very like stock and standard. But what ended up happening is it became so consistent that all authenticity was gone from it. And so I think maybe one of the things that Donald Trump changed most dramatically, even before he got elected, was that voters and especially donors started to reject things that were blatantly like canned responses and weren't thoughtful. Have you guys heard of the breakfast test?
Yes.
Right. So Dana, if I ask,
Can you describe it?
how would you feel if you didn't have breakfast this morning?
Hungry. Well, I don't know. I don't eat breakfast. But hypothetically, I would be hungry.
All right. So you passed. Like we'll give you the like marginal passing. Because
Okay.
it shows that you're actually listening, which is most people will say, I actually saw Mateen, the little weird podcaster kid, do this to John Kirkow, the supposedly former CIA guy. I'd say that one former, by the way. The CIA guys never leave the agency. That's a different topic, right? But he failed because he started to like, oh well, I didn't eat breakfast, number one, and then number two, I don't know what I would have eaten. It just shows a lack of like compelling listening, and like I think people are getting, and this is especially true of donors. The other thing that people should know if you're going to run for office, how much of your time has to be spent fundraising. To be honest, the reason that I tell people not to run for office most of the time is not they're going to dig up your past. I think you can get past all of that stuff if you're a strong, successful person. It's not like, oh, the misery of like the gruelingness of the schedule, the having to like shake it. To me, the worst part by far is having to spend 6 or 7 hours, 5 days a week calling people and asking them to give you money. Like it's very, in my opinion, like it's one of the reasons I've never run for office. To me, I hate that, like asking for money. It feels like begging to me. It's kind of part of how I was raised. But like, if you want to be a successful candidate, you're going to spend time on the phone. And when that starts to happen, your constituents really become the donor class. Donors have gotten very sophisticated at number one of the first things Josh asked. One of the things that I know donors will ask, half of the big donor calls that you'll make, one of the first things they'll ask is like, how many votes do you need to win and where they're going to come from? If you don't have an exact number and know which counties and where it's coming from, they're not going to cut you a check. The second thing they'll do is to differentiate who's actually listening versus not listening. And most importantly, who gets to the ask quickly, which is like, if you're spending 5 or 10 minutes on the phone with them, they know that you're not being efficient enough to raise the money to win and won't write the check. It's actually really fascinating, the dichotomy between like how much, again, imagine that you're spending 30 or 40 hours a week dialing for dollars, calling donors to raise the money that you need to be able to win. How much of your messaging is directed specifically at those people who are willing to cut checks?
And that's a good point, because then the profession of politics, if you could call it that, is optimized for candidates who come from a fundraising space. So the left, they have this NGO administrative complex that both sends into and pulls out of their candidates who are used to begging for money via grant requests, fundraising, charitable drive, these sorts of things, community activism. Politics is just left-wing community activism and agitation to get a particular office of power. Ironically, I believe one of the reasons why lawyers do so well, not only is their enjoyment of arguing, let's say, very simply, that's just what it is, but because they are regularly so often asking their customers, their clients, for money. They're sort of chasing the retainer and then the payments. You almost have to have a full-time person to get all of the accounts receivable in. So they're used to the asking for money. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a sales personality, you're extroverted, these positions are optimized already. You kind of already have the talent stack that you need. This past election season in my county, 2 of the candidates who beat the incumbent which is generally rare. It's generally very difficult to beat an incumbent in a primary, Republican primary. But I know two people. They were a husband and wife couple, by the way. Both of them are the most 11 out of 10 outgoing people you could possibly imagine. Both of them are entrepreneurs in their respective spaces. Literally everyone in town knows who they are. So to transition from a natural networker whom everyone knows, likes, and trusts to I'm running for office, of course I'm going to vote for you because I know you, like you, and trust you, versus someone who announced, just yesterday, or even the incumbent who somehow won last time, and yet no one even knows that they're the incumbent. Nobody even knows who this person is, you see.
Yeah, the way I say it when I'm being blackpilled or mean is the person who's going to win is whoever's best at getting rich people to put $100 bills in their campaign G-strings. Because really, it boils down to you better shake that ass for the donor class or you're not going to win. I think it's a sad reflection. I think there's a lot of things that could be done, but I do, since we've got you here, Josh, and I'm really excited to read the book. It's great talking to you. Okay, Trump is likely, I believe Trump is joking when he says he's going to run again. I think that's classic Trump troll. We're constitutionally limited to 2 terms. So where are we going from here? On the right, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Ron DeSantis. My thought, I'll give I'll cheat and take host privileges and say that I actually think that after the bombacity of Trump and the turmoil that people are going to lean heavily. I think the right's going to look for somebody who's proven to be the maximum level of effective administrator. And believe it or not, I would say that person, in my opinion, has been Governor Ron DeSantis, who has managed Florida in a way that is so unbelievable. Listen, I was so hard on DeSantis when he ran against Trump in the primary, but I think we tend to go in cycles, and people are who's going to be the next Trump? I don't think the electorate's going to look for the next Trump. I think we're going to want somebody who is seen as a cold, calculated, sober administrator who can get in and get shit done. And I think it's Ron DeSantis. I would say I like Rubio from the meme game better than J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, he's got to overcome the fat J.D. Vance meme, which is hilarious and everywhere. Marco Rubio has the strongest meme game of people on the right that I know of, with the Marco taking every job that's hard. That, it's such a brilliant and effective meme. I think to Trump had The Apprentice, where he branded himself to people across the country as the boss who comes in and makes the big decisions at the end of the show. Marco Rubio, all of these things, when you see Marco Rubio in the beekeeper suit or the astronaut suit or whenever somebody's screwing up, we put Marco Rubio in at that job. That is such effective branding and meme magic for the 2028 election. So I would put 2 Florida guys. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a Florida man, but I really like DeSantis. I really like Rubio. I think J.D. Vance is going to have to, for presidential elections, usually it's very, very, very rare that people win on their first go round. They usually do well, something flames out, and they have to come back for 8 years later. I think we'll see that with Vance. I think he's young enough to do it. I think he's going to be a contender for a long time. But I think Rubio and DeSantis are probably my favorites in the clubhouse now. What do you think, Josh?
I suspect that if the election is, obviously there are things that can change between now and then. There has been a lot of criticism, sort of the gas prices voter, which is, I'm going to surmise that between 20 and 30% of the likely voter in a given election, be it midterm or presidential, is the gas prices voter. And they vote based, as you can tell, based on gas prices. Gas prices are over $4, over $4.50, over $5 in states that are used to between $2 and $2.50. That does not bode well for the Republican Party in the midterms. That said, one of the justifications, or rather explanations, is, well, a feckless, if not intentionally incompetent and non-cooperative congressional Republican Party leaves the Trump administration to focus their efforts on overseas antics. Geopolitical actions take years. They're not simply one and done signing the bill that was shipped to them from the Senate or via executive order. There's negotiation, there's summits, there's saber rattling, there's blasting and getting blasted back and then blasting harder than before. It's rather messy. This is why, unfortunately, enemy states like China, with their 100-year plan of the Communist Party, are at a distinct advantage over us in the free world here in the West, where we have these 2 and 4 year cycles of power swap and administration. And the idea can simply be, well, I'll just wait these people out here and we'll kind of do our thing. Of course, their concern might be, is the next person going to be worse for us? Obviously, Biden was very friendly right now, or rather to the administration. I would even say friendly to the point of being submissive to the Chinese Communist Party. That said, I don't recall who it was. It might have been Curtis Yarvin who said that J.D. Vance, as a meme, contains more Americas within him than any other public figure. And I believe that to be correct. And I believe that J.D. Vance is, in my opinion, far and above the best for 2028 that the Republican Party could offer. The reason why I would not say Rubio is probably that shot is, even though that meme edifies him, it makes him sort of spiritually a butler, the guy who keeps getting all the jobs. That's not the person who assigns the jobs. That's the person who does the jobs and then gets assigned this new jobs by the next guy who's the boss. Typically, what we've seen work for Republicans is the VP is worse than the president from a look how bad this could be. Some of the most bitter weeping and teeth gnashing from the left came about via Governor Mike Pence, then Vice President, and the Handmaid's Tale meme that became this left-wing obsession amongst whom I call the NPR Americans. Don't forget the hyphen. These are people who believe their official news sources, these NPR Americans, and thought that because Pence was in the White House, we're literally going to have the most egregious interpretation of conservative Christianity made literally the law of the land, and the Mike Pence rule was going to be federal law or something like that. So that made Trump look better in comparison. And I think the Trump versus Vance dynamic does reflect that, where Vance is even more of a nationalist, a populist. And even today, amongst a lot of the baby boomer Republicans I see locally, they will do a little bit of complaining that J.D. Vance, they perceive vice president, is an isolationist and that we got to do more to support Israel. Even to this day, folks, to this day, actual community organizers, Republicans, who may not be around for 2028, actually, if you know what I mean, at the very top of the baby boomer cohort, may not be around to make that much of a difference. That's the reality in which they're living. So we think, who is more terrifying than J.D. Vance? Oh, Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is even more terrifying than J.D. Vance. Ron DeSantis might be also. If it's Ron DeSantis versus Vance, I would give the advantage to Vance simply because Donald Trump being his current boss and the number 2 man in line that he's chosen, he would be likelier, in my opinion, to endorse Vance, or at least not help DeSantis, and or at least not help against Vance. And or assist Vance in some capacity from behind the scenes to make him the heir apparent, even if he doesn't officially endorse, because you don't want to make your number 2's job harder than it has to be while they're your number 2, let's say, just palace intrigues and whatnot. So if it were me, I would select Vance at the top with Stephen Miller as the VP because he's more terrifying to the left in every single way you could possibly imagine. He's kind of my MVP, if you might say, amongst the nationalist and populist mass persuasion methodology. If you look at what terrifies the left the most, they obsessively talk about how much, Stephen Miller, he's literally, and then they mention some propagandists from 1930s Germany, which is of course a great irony because Stephen Miller, of course, is Jewish, which is just like, they can't even keep their racialized anti-Republican memes straight. These people. The Fat JD Vance meme endears him to the American people, unlike any other meme that I've seen. There have been a number of like orange man, tan skin, spray tan type of memes that have the left has done to try to mock or otherwise insult Trump's appearance, and they never really work because people don't really care. It's like, yeah, so we already know that about him. Whereas with Vance, like, we know that's not him, obviously, but because he's played with it, he's gone into it, he's embraced it, it becomes endearing, and it becomes a larger than life folk hero, let's say, in a way that if you look up the presidential memes, I would even call them memes, of Teddy Roosevelt during his campaign. Look at the cartoons that were printed of Teddy Roosevelt, and some of them, they made him look like a bobblehead. Okay, to try to show how big his head was, physically, but also, let's say, emotionally, and what his self-perceptiveness. And I see a similar thing with sort of the various Vance memes that are just an absolute blast. So that would be my thinking and my suggestion. It will, I believe, will most likely come down to Gavin Newsom as the Democratic nominee, simply because the Democrats want to win, and doing this whole DEI for president thing, realized that I believe taught them that they can do that at the state level and in various U.S. House districts and for the Senate across various states. But if you want to win, you have to give the American people what they want, which is not another DEI candidate.
Wow. So I strongly disagree about Gavin Newsom. I think you're going to see the kind of rumblings on the left that the Tea Party caused on the right. And I really believe somebody like AOC is likely to be the candidate, and far more formidable than people give her credit for. Much like Trump, he benefited from the fact that the left never took him seriously, never took his chances of winning seriously. I see Republicans make the same mistake with people like AOC. I think she's a real contender. I think it's going to be one thing I know about presidential politics, though. My favorite thing, there will always be things that there's things that will come up that surprise everybody, that completely shift all of it. There will be dark horses. Stockton for Benevolent Empire 2028. My new campaign promise today, IRS immunity for all victims of Democrat media and tech retardation. We're going to build on the Trump weaponization committee. If you have suffered as a victim of Democrat media and tech retardation, we're giving you lifetime IRS immunity. Benevolent Empire, let's go. But no, I really, the meme stuff, it's funny because I love the Fat Vance memes. I love that he embraced it. It gets to some of the points you made earlier, which is it's the other thing that people don't appreciate Trump is how self-deprecating he is in his speeches and the way he is. Like the left has tried to make him into this, but Trump makes fun of himself and trolls himself constantly if you know how to look for it, which is he knows when he's giving some of these over-the-top statements, it makes him laugh internally at how over the top it is, and that that he could say that, and that he's going to get the reaction from the left-wing autists. We're like, he's being literal when he says this. And so the troll game, I will say this, Vance Miller would cause head explosions on the left at almost unfathomable. But Stephen Miller, I kind of look at the same way I look at DeSantis, which is he is a cold, effective administrator on the policies he's been sent to, his ability to focus in on the actual task of governing. I think people are really I think we're going to see that elevated in how people judge the bombastic character. I think that will be downgraded slightly, and we'll be looking for really effective. So I'm looking at governors. It's why it's always hard for members of the House and Senate to elevate to presidential politics. Is that you end up bloviating on so many different topics. It's hard for people to see you as the boss who can get stuff done. It's really interesting about the Rubio meme. I'd never framed it the way you did, Josh. So really, really interesting. This has been a great discussion, man. We got to do this again sometime.
Sure thing. AOC is an interesting candidate, and I think the late great influencer Scott Adams probably would have been able to make a compelling case for AOC, because he was one of the first people who pointed out that she was going to win her primary with her very first campaign ad published to Twitter and YouTube and whatnot at the time. And he simply said that this woman's going to win just from seeing just the very first video announcing it, using left-wing populist language and framing her candidacy as we against the incumbents who don't care about us, don't actually even live here. We're all Latinos, the bits of the commercial were in Spanish, of course. And that was effective for that reason. One of the memes about her that I think dooms her chances has to do, of all things, with her weight. It's the same meme applied to JD Vance, where you increasingly make the person look, let's say, of a higher body mass index. But in her case, there's a lot of suspicion. Oh, is she actually been pregnant, or what's going on here? And I think the sex appeal that she has will be via AI exaggerated out of the photos that she has, being like this hot, preppy Latina perky character that she has been portrayed as being. So I think the meme that makes that endears us to JD Vance has the opposite effect on an AOC. And also, in my opinion, the first woman in president is absolutely, of course, going to be a Republican.
What do you think, Dana?
AOC? Well, with all these, with looks maxing being very popular now, maybe the JD Vance eyeliner is going to be in style, and a lot of men will start relating to this. So I don't know.
Would you order JD Vance eyeliner from the JD Vance merch store?
Yeah, they can be an affiliate.
I think we could make that
happen. Let us know if you guys want to be an affiliate. Send us an email. What did you say, Dustin?
I said I think we could probably get that. Like, JD Vance's, again, self-deprecation humor is so effective. Like, it's also really effective at creating that link and authenticity that we've talked about a lot. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. So last question I want to throw out there. I think people are not going to want to hear this from me. As it stands right now, I predict Republicans lose 35 seats in the House, and we have a split 50-50 in the Senate. I think it's going to be a bloodbath for Republicans. Unless the war changes, gas prices come down significantly. There's always headwinds when you have an incumbent president, and the first midterm, the other party usually historically outperforms. I think that's exacerbated by ineffective Republican leadership in both the House and Senate. Speaker Mike Rowe Johnson is a joke, right? Like the messaging. Did you see the video of the other day of him being like, well, we have to be able to insider trade to take care of our families? It's such a let them eat. Like, it's so bad. If I was a Democrat, like if I was working for Democrats, I would have that in campaign videos, no matter where I was running, just to show how out of touch Republican leaders. They've delivered almost nothing that would get people like me excited to like build a grassroots movement and like help. I could care less if Speaker Johnson, Mike Rowe Johnson, is allowed, right? Like, it's returned to power or not. So my prediction, Republicans lose 35 seats, which makes the lead up to 2028 all that more interesting, because the inter-party fight over control of the party, each of the serious presidential candidates end up taking a part of the like Republican base, and they're competing for like who's going to go after the Thomas Massie libertarian wing, who's going to go after the hardcore MAGA Trump people, who's going to go after the traditional conservative, like hardcore, like been in the Republican Party. Each one of these candidates is going to have to like kind of pick their team and try to build coalitions inside the party while being out of power. I think it lends for a very, very fascinating test case for who takes over.
Yes, I think so too. And I think it will be the gas prices voter going into like the summer vacation season. Do they get any relief for all the driving and whatnot that is likely to be happening? So kind of running out of time, Republican Party here, certainly. You're down to weeks that you have left to fix this. So the interesting thing is, this is a complaint that my father always had, yelling at President Bush at the television on ABC News, Peter Jennings, 2001, 2002, 2007, pick your year, right? He would say things like, do you want to win or not? He would always say. And to the Republican Party, I say, do you want to win or not? And if a purpose of a system is what it does, and it is, it seems like the purpose of the congressional Republican system is to protect Democrats' chances for a congressional bloodbath in November. That seems to be their purpose for existing at this time. They have a few weeks left to get gas prices slashed by approximately 30% minimum, if not 50%, and then it becomes a competitive ballgame for Republicans significantly.
Well, Joshua, thank you so much for coming. Everyone should check out Run Right, your new book. I thought what was really cool about you is that you kind of became a ghostwriter by accident. And when you were asked, like, oh, do you kind of get annoyed when people don't know that, you wrote the book? You're like, well, like you got this job because a lot of people read your writing and they were so impressed by it that they wanted you to write their book. So I think that we'll one day have to do a grassroots fundraising so you could write Dustin's book. That's what I was talking to Joshua about earlier, Dustin, before you joined. I think that it would be a killer story. When I saw your title, it actually made me think of What Makes Sammy Run. Did you ever read that book, Joshua? The What Makes Sammy Run book. It was about a ghostwriter. It was actually taken off the shelves for a time because it was like kind of showing the deception that can come along with some people who rise the ladder and make it to the top. It's kind of about like a ghostwriter in Hollywood. But anyway, that's what your title made me think of. It was very popular, I don't know, like a long time ago. But you guys should check it out. Thank you so much for coming. Make sure to follow Joshua on X. And anything else that you want to announce where people can find you?
Thank you. I think it glitched out there for a second. I think my camera glitched out for a second, but I want to say thank you to Dustin. Thank you, of course, to you. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you tonight, and I think we've had enough room for disagreement. I was concerned that we would not disagree on enough, actually, Dana. I was like, oh, we show up and we just agree with each other for an hour, But I think enough points of disagreement that we made it interesting for everyone. So it's been a blast. Thank you very much, and all my best shenanigans you can find out about over on X at Joshua Lysak.
Yeah, I just dropped you a follow. I'll definitely order the book and happy to share it. Listen, I thought it was fascinating. I think we should. I'm just saying, Dana. I think some more political arguments and debate. It would have been really good.
Let's do it.
I'll get Brock on because Brock's a really another interesting test case. Because right, like Brock's very pragmatic. He supported Eric Adams very heavily, right? Like Brock's all over the like political sphere. Love him like a brother, but like we vehemently disagree in a lot of areas. And these kinds of debates are so much more important than people realize, which is the way that information flows in politics is very trackable. And it starts at these level of conversations. Oh, that was the last really important thing I wanted to say about Josh. If you're really serious about getting involved in politics, your local party, you become a precinct committeeman, which gives you voting power, in the county party, which gives you voting power, in the state party, which gives you voting power in the national party. That's where the organizing, and like if you haven't been a precinct committeeman and you're thinking about running for office, your first run should always be for that precinct committeeman so that you understand the actual party apparatus that's necessary to win. and the individual election rules in each individual state. So that's the last part I'll say. Great conversation. We should do more politics, and right, at least until Bitcoin stops being so freaking boring with this chop. Chop, 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 chop.
All right, we'll do it. Joshua, you're invited anytime. We'll set up another really cool panel. So come back again, and see you guys next Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Cheers, guys.
Arch Lending is building the most transparent borrowing experience in crypto. Get industry-leading rates from 8.49% APR, borrow against Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana, and receive USD or USDC within minutes. Your assets stay protected with qualified custody, no rehypothecation, and verifiable segregated addresses. As your collateral grows, unlock more liquidity, adjust your line anytime, and extend your term with a single click. And with 24/7 white glove support, you're never on your own. Arch Lending, simple tiers, public pricing, market-leading rates at every size. Check them out at archlending.com/debates. Again, it's archlending.com/debates. Use code debates to get 50 basis points off your APR on your crypto-backed loan today.